Alex has never said anything controversial in his life. Welcome to the High Performance Podcast. I'm here as always with my loyal co-host, Jacob Mesquita, and with a highly esteemed guest, Alex Sterner. First and foremost, jiu-jitsu practitioner, strength coach second. I actually just completely made that up, but I did make a mental note to talk about jiu-jitsu with the man today. Alex Sterner, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, mate, it's an absolute pleasure. I think we sort of had you pegged for a while, coach with very similar values and also living the GPP life in your own way. So, yeah, I sort of made a bit of a reference to it before. What is I guess you're a strength coach for what you do. Are you competing much in jiu-jitsu at the moment, or are you just more, I don't want to say lifelong as well, because I actually don't know when you started jiu-jitsu, but you got your black belt from Andre Galvao.
Yeah.
Which is like, fucking, he's the man. He's the no-gi. Is he the gi guy as well?
Yeah, man.
Because to me, he's the no-gi. I know Gordon's making a very strong case for it right now, but prior to Gordon, Galvao was the fucking king of ADCC and the open weight. So he had a bit of a gi career as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's got 5 titles in the gi.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so... dude, super accomplished in both. He was actually a huge part of the reason why I moved out to San Diego, to train under him. To give you a little insight into what you were talking about, I've been training jiu-jitsu for about 20 years now. But yeah, I'd say
how old are you?
Wow, how old do you think I am?
I had you. If I was going to guess, I would have guessed 92, baby. But it's 20 years of jiu-jitsu. Now you can start at 12, but
yeah, 91. Yeah.
Oh, close.
Nice one.
Oh, so you were quite young, early adopter. Fuck, I thought I was an early adopter when I flirted with jiu-jitsu for 3 months. Fuck, when was that? In 2011? You would have been doing jiu-jitsu in 2008 or something, 2000, no, even earlier.
Yeah, 2000. So 2004 actually. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, dude, before I could drive, me and my buddy, we had our parents driving us to our jiu-jitsu academy. And at the time, it's not like there was a kids program or anything. We're just scrapping with the adults,
Oh, right in the deep end.
What the fuck? All right, sorry, yeah, take us back to the start. Sorry. Yeah, explain this all to us from the jump.
Yeah, man. So, around when I started with jiu-jitsu was around when I started wrestling as well. And dude, back in the day, I was insanely skinny. I had a pretty late growth spurt. And my freshman year of high school, I was 5'9", 5'10", and I was wrestling at 119 and 125.
Wow. 55, 60 kilos for Aussie listeners.
Yeah, man.
Jesus Christ, Jacob, it's divided by 2.2. It's not that hard.
Honestly, going that way is a bit more impressive than, going kilos to pounds. But anyways, so I was super skinny for the first couple years I did it, and didn't really realize how weak I was until I started to take strength training more seriously, started to put some muscle on. My growth, started to slow down in terms of how tall I was growing. And I was just man, sports are so much easier, things are so much better, not just getting thrown around. And I really think that gave this really deep, intrinsic, benefit to strength training, conditioning, the whole nine. And then when I was in school, it just turned out the school that I was at was one of the best kinesiology programs in the country. And I'm dude, business sucks as a major. Jumped into kinesiology. I remember even when I met with the advisor, I had gotten my NASM cert because I'm all right, I'm all about this, right? And I wanted to go and show that because I know it's a good program. And I remember the advisor at the time was, dude, she was so rude to me. She was yeah, with all due respect, our kinesiology program doesn't prep people to be high school gym teachers. And I remember dude, that lit a fire,
I kind of love her energy though.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure. And like she probably gets so many stupid muscle heads rolling through. Like I get it, you know.
Like yeah, that's it. Like just like if I was a third fly on the wall, they're like probably it's a pretty funny response.
Oh no,
is the NASM like a Cert 3-4 equivalent in Australia? Like like just a one before like sports science? Is that what the NASM is?
So NASM is just like a weekend cert, and honestly, like
CSCS would be the equivalent of the Cert 3-4. Because I've always, to be fair, been quite confused. NASM is just a big company then.
Yeah, dude, they've had like this brilliant marketing campaign where, you know, everybody in commercial fitness thinks it's like the gold standard. And I've actually like made content on this. Like their OPT model is complete shit. They say you should always rotate back to like a full month of stabilization, which is just like unstable surface training. And then you have to go into a couple weeks of hypertrophy and then a couple weeks of max strength and then like a couple weeks of power. It's like a complete nonsense model that literally nobody uses.
It's like you can just tell it's straight from a textbook, not training anyone in real life.
Yeah, it's trash.
Well, because it's interesting because when you brought up a stabilization phase, my only other recall of that was Charlie Francis in his model. He's got like the overreaching phase and then he puts a stabilization phase after it. And I had always assumed that he meant stabilization, maybe like a little bit, we give him a little bit of a deload. We're not trying to push anything. We're just trying to, let the system stabilize. But now I'm like, wait, did he mean like Bosu balls and shit? No, I was like reading it being like, no, Charlie would never do that.
Yeah, man.
Sorry. Anyway, side tangent. I need to go back down the Charlie Francis rabbit hole. Also, I know Charlie Francis is a legend, even if he had cunts standing on Bosu balls. Obviously, shout out to the high-low model.
Yeah.
I would not. That's fucking bonkers that's a gold standard.
Dude, so I actually think a huge amount, or like a huge reason for why so many people think that these unstable surfaces provide some sort of like universal trait of stability. They basically, with this model, they claim that like you need to work into stabilizing before you actually, do strength training. It's nonsense.
You can't shoot a cannon out of a canoe.
Classic example. Classic.
I don't know. Why do we feel like we're such fundamentally unstable creatures? The stability thing, it is fucking crazy, hey, because when you say to people, it's like, no, do you mean strength? Like 90% of the time they're like, oh, actually, yeah. You're like, right, we can just...
Yeah, I think... I don't know, man. People love having, I think it comes from a lot of like blowhards that want it to be this super intricate, like specific process that we have to follow. Otherwise, like, and then it gives a nice simple explanation for why you have this weird, like serendipitous injury, as opposed to it being like, wow, this is really multifactorial. And like, there were probably a lot of contributing factors. You're just like, oh, you blew past the stabilization phase. You were shooting your cannon out of a canoe. That's why the rotator cuff blew up,
I think it also sells well as well, taking an athlete through like, oh, you're going through this stage, rather than just being some unexplainable thing like, oh, it's just vibes this week and what we're feeling sort of thing. I don't think that translates well to athletes.
Yeah, the vibes don't sell as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, just the attitude, because I think what I used to regard as a highly scientific attitude was like looking for methods that would give you certainty. But then I feel like by exploring those methods further, we've kind of ended up in this place where to be scientifically minded, you're actually meant to be the opposite, like embracing all this uncertainty. And I just feel like it was a big paradigm shift slap in the face that a lot of us, quite frankly, didn't sign up for. And I think we all have trouble just like wrestling with it as times. And like you were sort of hinted at, Alex, like just, I think we all have the desire for sacred knowledge and to be a bit of a guru, whereas like that this uncertainty and this now sort of more being forced into like collaborative roles and things like that. Like, yeah, I just feel like, again, buzzword of the day, paradigm shift. There's just been like huge paradigm shift in like what the fucking role of a coach was.
If you want to learn more about the general physical preparation training philosophy, we put together an extremely practical course covering all the different aspects of physical preparation, as well as a unit on programming, so you know how to tie it all together and produce the same world-class results that we get with our athletes. We've got pre-recorded lectures, a community page where you can ask questions and interact with the other GPP coaches, as well as monthly calls where you can ask questions live or just catch up and hang out with us. Check out the link in the show notes for more info. Anyway, back to the show.
Well, yeah, really, so like one final thing I like to throw at that is like, I really do think though, you know how some people will allow their, let's say, content to be very heavily influenced by engagement, right? I think a lot of people let their service be influenced by how it lands with their potential clients or prospective clients. And I'm sure you've seen this, right? Like someone in pain, desperate for an answer, and they come to you and like they just want you to say, oh man, it's because your shoulders are a little off and I have the perfect fix for that. That's actually what they want. But you start to go on about the biopsychosocial model. Maybe you pull up that cool diagram with all the different colors.
The back one.
Yeah.
Dude, their eyes glaze over and they go to the next person that will talk to them the way they want to be talked to. And I think a lot of professionals have sort of fallen into their service being shaped by the expectations of their customers,
Yeah.
It's almost like it's a clickbaity solution that they need. Like they need that clickbait in order to buy in. But, no one's really listening to pain science conversations to when you're like on your last end and on your fourth physio. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
But having 50,000 followers on the gram is good for a bit of buy-in and you get a placebo edge. I'm running a placebo edge of at least 10 to 15% on top of the average practitioner. Like assuming that they've followed me for like 6 to 12 months before they've actually booked in, like the amount of buy-in I get compared to what I used to be dealing with on the gym floor, it's like fucking night and day.
For sure. There's definitely like momentum to be gathered from stuff like that. But I do think, I don't know, man, I almost feel like some people fall into like the pain science and biopsychos, like they're so by the book with that they actually lose an element of disconnect. Like I credit to you. You seem to do a really good job of still connecting with people while still, really adhering to what the science says, but man, it can be tough. And I know some people that are so abrasive with it that like, you can tell the second they start to open their mouth, they're losing that person in front of them who wants that answer.
I imagine that that's something that you've become a bit of a black belt with though, forgive the pun, because again, the jiu-jitsu community is probably one that's been criticized. Or martial artists just like as a whole, forget about jiu-jitsu. The reputation there is much more aligned with the woo-woo when it comes to, well, like I said, like what's a martial artist ever got out of reading research and stuff like that versus all of a sudden with nutrition and strength and conditioning, a lot of it sort of does come from that place. So like what has that sort of been like and what have you learned from that process and what was that like initially? Because I guess you haven't always had the reputation that you did. Like you've built a reputation as an awesome practitioner and as a martial artist, but then I imagine it wasn't always that way.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't always that way. And dude, I think it's a struggle all the time. Like you said, there is a lot of that woo-woo. There's a lot of the, it worked for me. I do think, in martial arts, it's kind of, mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu. You've got a bit of a theory and it might piss some people off, but from what I've seen anecdotally, it seems to hold true. I think a lot of guys that fall into jiu-jitsu or MMA or other combat sports were like chronically the kid picked last on the basketball court and they grew up sort of shunning other sports to the point where like, dude, if you go to like an NBA game and you look at who's courtside, you've got NFL players, you've got hockey players, like all of these other traditional sports. They all grew up as like 3-sport athletes. They played multiple sports. They still love other sports. Man, like here in San Diego, the Legion Open mat is like, it's like legendary. It's huge, right? And it's on Sundays in like the middle of the NFL games, and people like they shun it. They look for an open mat to go to instead of watching the Super Bowl and stuff. And I think with that, they shun anything that these other athletes are known to do, like lifting weights or whatever it might be, right? Like it's really kind of like an athletic counterculture in that sense.
You're right.
Deep-seated resentment, yeah.
Dude, for real. For real. And
wow. From the ground up, because even the bullshit that they say, oh, it doesn't matter about strength, it doesn't matter about your athleticism, I'm this fucking nerdy ninja sort of. That's what they romanticize.
They're the kids that were shoved into lockers until they learned how to fight. And now they have that resentment towards the people. Obviously, there's exceptions, right? There are some very athletic people in jiu-jitsu.
There's still those top game Americanos, my only submission, incredibly based way to live your life.
You really, those 3 months of jiu-jitsu really hung with you.
Oh, I don't, how should I say this on the podcast politely? I have the type of neurodivergence where I don't compete in powerlifting or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but I watch all the big contests and have sort of done for like over half a decade. I'm like way too balls deep in those sports.
That's beautiful.
For how much I don't participate. Yeah.
You know that's like a crazy exception in jiu-jitsu. I think jiu-jitsu is an awesome like participation sport, but like I'm under the belief there's all these people who talk about like, oh, this rule set is the best spectator rule set. There's no spectator rule set in jiu-jitsu. Like,
no, I'm the only one.
Yeah, no, you are the only one.
So would you say like people are literally just going onto the mat and then that's it? They just completely forget about it, not studying it. Is that what you were trying to say there? Or
no, just that they're nerds their whole life, and it's just this like ninja, like don't use any strength. It's like embarrassing to use strength and have these physical qualities. Like go to the fucking football field. Like here we use technique and wizard moves and tactical prowess and stuff like that.
I was talking about what you were saying, Gus, and how you were explaining how you know everything, and then Alex was like, "Oh, no one." Yeah.
What I was getting at was that he doesn't really train jiu-jitsu, but he watches it enough to know something that's like, it's like a tip. What you said was like a top guy that only knows an Americana. That's a pretty like deep jiu-jitsu lore joke, and for someone who hasn't really trained, like that's very strange to hear.
Mate, do you know how many times I got Americana'd in my in your 3 months of jiu-jitsu, being a skinny small guy? I was just getting topped and Americana'd like it was going out of fashion. And I've seen the meme since, and I was like, all right, yeah, that's very fucking related.
I mean, it's probably helped that external rotation for your front rack,
Absolutely, yeah. You're just getting cranked into that position, just like nice partner stretch there. I think that's actually going off right now, the old partner stretching thing. I'll go back though. So did you just get into jiu-jitsu, and was there a part of you that was like, this is my life now, or like this is going to be a big part of my life?
Yeah, so to be really frank with you, I got like jumped once or twice growing up where I felt super helpless. Yeah, and I thought the only thing that would solve this is submitting myself to an activity that'll make me feel helpless all the time. So I made sure to hop on that like any sane person would. It turned into an obsession. I don't know, like.
Where were you from? Where were you fucking walking around? Just getting, or is this just fucking
Connecticut? Yeah, I mean, honestly, like a pretty middle of nowhere, like rural neighborhood in Connecticut. It wasn't. Neither of them were like terrible events. It's not like I spent time in the hospital. I just remember feeling helpless when, like, one of them was like a kid that was a couple years older than me. Held me down, beat me up a little bit. And I was like, man, this sucks. I remember like as it's happening, I'm like, man, this is terrible. And I don't want this to happen.
Does someone stop this? Like, is someone going to come and like, just that fear of like, I have no idea when this person just decides this is over. Like, yeah,
man, it was honestly like, it wasn't that the first event, the one that sucked the most, it wasn't actually super brutal. It was just, we were on this playground. It was me and this kid that was a couple years older than me. And it was like kind of a cat and mouse thing. He wasn't like trying to hurt me as bad as he could, but I was like totally not down with it and couldn't make it stop, And so, I hated that. And it really motivated me to find something. And when finally I convinced my parents to drive me to this jiu-jitsu thing, which funny enough, they'd been driving me to for a while. Then I convinced them, I'm like, oh, there's a Muay Thai class before that. I'm going to do that. They don't know what any of this stuff is, right? So I'm doing more stuff like getting into like the MMA scene. And I remember The Ultimate Fighter 1, like season 1. The finale was on Spike TV. And I remember partway through Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin, I like ran to my dad and I'm like, Dad, you got to see this. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. He's in there watching it with me. And I remember at one point he turns to me and he's like, is this the shit that you do when I drop you off on Friday nights? And I'm like, Dad, not even close. Like, honestly, that does not give a good depiction of like what jujitsu, like it should like immediately cut to some dude like on his butt scooting forward, you know, like that's a lot more of like what I was doing.
Yeah. Like who's it? The Simpsons character? Is it Artie Ziff? Marge's ex?
Man, I don't know.
Who was the rich, short, curly hair guy? Yeah, it's like Artie Ziff. And when Homer has a problem with me, it's like one of the oldest jujitsu jokes, even back then. He just lays on his back and he's like, come into my garden, meet your demise. And Homer's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
The GPP group program is the best deal in strength and conditioning. For less than $1 a day, you get access to my programming as well as access to me through a group chat where you can reach out, ask questions, or have a form check. You can even get a week for free before you commit to it. Check out the show notes for more info.
I wanted to know, was there early thoughts of like, I want to make a career out of this? Or like, when then did you get into strength and conditioning? Because I know obviously at uni there was the shift out of business, but when was the point where you got training mad and you tried to develop some physical qualities?
Yeah. So in college, early on, when I started, really jumping on with strength training, seeing that translate to wrestling, to jiu-jitsu. Then I'm in college, it's a great kinesiology program. I start to learn more about it. I also I wanted to stop doing a minimum wage job. So I'm like, man, personal training would be sweet. Like I like lifting. I want to teach people how to do that. That sort of line of logic. When I got into the program, I was one of the coaches that I interned under. And I honestly, there were a lot of things that my younger self was not too great about, but we only had to intern for 200 hours for our major. And I remember, and it was only one semester. I did for 2 full years and it was like 1,500 hours under 2 different coaches. It was phenomenal. I remember one of the coaches I interned under, she was like, honestly, knowing your personality, I can see that you want to get into like Division I or like professional athletics. She's like, I would recommend you to just go into the private sector. You can still work with athletes if you want to. And honestly,
wow,
it was a huge, and I was like, you know what? I can fuck with that. I remember I went, after I graduated, I went home, stayed with my parents, worked in commercial fitness, was like, this ain't it. Did that for like a year. And then I competed this was when I was still competing regularly in jiu-jitsu. I flew out to San Diego to compete in Pan Ams. At the time, it was in Irvine, California, which is like an hour north of here. Stayed with one of my buddies from college, and I dropped in at Atos and got annihilated. And I was like, man, this is where I got to be. Like where I was in Connecticut, I was like, it was like big fish, small pond. I wrestled. I was like, I was bigger than everybody. I was also, I'd been training for longer because I started earlier. It was like when I came out here, even people who trained way less time than me, like were beating the shit out of me. I remember when I went home, I quit my job, tied up my loose ends, and then moved out here to San Diego like a month later. And for the first 6 months I was out here, I had like an identity crisis. I'm like, man, everything that I've spent the last 10 years training, I don't know a damn thing. I'm getting worked by everybody. It was a huge jump, to really
What belt was your coach out in Connecticut? Like, were they even a black belt?
Okay, yeah. In 2004, so when I first started, the highest ranking person at the gym was like purple to brown belt. By the time, it was 2015 when I moved out here. At that time, we'd had a black belt for a while. The owner of the gym was bringing in a black belt for a time to lead the program. And then he himself got his black belt as well. So it picked up. But yeah, at first, most of my classes were under a purple belt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and like whatever, like there's fucking purple belts that are like almost like at a world level. I think the belt system sort of gets increasingly more vague every year that passes by, and especially with, I guess, the growing influence of no-gi and stuff like that. But I think it's similar to weightlifting in the sense that I remember in the early days of CrossFit when I was really inspired to learn weightlifting, it was like these actual weightlifting coaches were like scattered across just various corners of the world. It was so hard to track them down. And like, even though the internet was abundant, it's just like, there just wasn't that much information about it online compared to now, where it's just like, and it's the same with jiu-jitsu. One, there's a black belt on every street corner, but there's just like, you know, all these instructionals and things like that. Like, fuck, it's developed so much. I always love hearing about the quest for knowledge that just takes people like all over their country and to various places and stuff like that.
For sure. That's what drove me out here. You know, it was at that time, dude, in 2015, Atos was the place to be. There were like world-class guys. You know,
they were the top guys.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Keenan and JT were all out here at that time. Dude, JT Torres, who now has his academy in New York, Essential Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, he was like my first big-time jiu-jitsu client. And I mean, it was wild working with him. And then honestly, man, my thought coming out here is I was like, okay, I'm going to compete for a few years. I'm going to show them that, you know, I'm like, you know, I'm very much involved in jiu-jitsu as well. Maybe I'll pick up a couple clients. Man, I got JT as a client like maybe 3-4 months after I moved out here. And then it just very rapidly snowballed from there. I remember one day in comp class, he was just like, guys, I'm working with Sterner. If any of you guys want to get your strength and conditioning up, start working with him. And he was a leader on the team. And then literally a few months later, like Andre's like, okay, we're going to organize like team lifts, which was wild, man. We brought like, it was like a Division I weight room, but I was just working with a bunch of the best jiu-jitsu athletes in the world. It was insane.
And so you were pretty quickly embraced by so were they into their lifting before you got there in any capacity?
Yeah, for sure.
Embracing it? Okay.
Andre was pretty big on like trying to keep the comp team together. And, you know, there was a period in time where they were doing like CrossFit together. And while it was good, it was like just extraordinarily fatiguing for them, you know, to run CrossFit classes together and then try to, you know, do their comp classes, which are 2 hours long. Like it was just a lot.
Load management out the window.
Yeah, no, it was throw them in the meat grinder. Whoever survives is going to win something, you know? But yeah, it was kind of wild. And then getting us to work together. And then one of my buddies that I went to college with, he actually started the business, you know, that I own here. Him and I started it together. Where it was the two of us running camps for all of these major tournaments with like, you know, 20 jiu-jitsu athletes in the world, you know, a line of squat racks. I wish I was bigger on like content creation then. It was like 2016, 2017, 2018 that we were doing these. Yeah. Man, it was wild. I rented out some gym that was like a strength and conditioning facility down the street from Atos. And
dude, who was doing proper training in jiu-jitsu back then?
Nobody.
You.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just us. Great.
And so what was like the first moment where you made that connection between S&C and jiu-jitsu? Was it like what you saw and how it changed in your game, or you just were like, this makes me feel better sort of thing?
Yeah. In terms of like wanting to do it professionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I noticed that a lot of people didn't really take it seriously. And what's funny is there was this like sports administration class that we took in school. And I remember one of the first days they went around the class and they were asking everyone like what we wanted to do with our degree. You know, some people are like, I want to go off to, you know, get my DPT, you know, whatever. People are like, I want to work in golf. I want to work, you know, there was a guy that wanted to be a strength coach, and I think he is in NASCAR. And I was like, I want to work in combat sports. And at the time, there's no UFC Performance Institute. There's like, this was like 2011, right? And
holy shit, you were early.
Yeah, they're like, so where does that exist? And I'm like, it doesn't.
It's like Frankie Edgar lightweight champion years, isn't it? Like,
yeah, seriously. And like, it was kind of like, looking back on it, it's cool. At the time, it was like, what were you thinking? You know, like it was kind of crickets, you know, everyone else, because then they're asking like, what's the path for you? And they're sort of mapping it out. And for me, I'm like, I don't know, man. I also train. Maybe I'll go like try not to get my head caved in and train with some people who are really good and see what works out. And that's kind of how it happened.
because it's so obvious for football. It's so there's so many career paths. Or sorry, let's even go to within S&C, where there's just these stages that you can sort of mentally map out. It's like, okay, well, I'll work with like a local team or a high school team, and then maybe I try to work my way up to like college. But even within the college sector, there's all this progression, like D4, is there a division higher than that? And then all the way to D1, and then trying to sniff into some professional. Whereas with jiu-jitsu, it's just like, there you are.
Yeah, no, it was basically like, dude, I had like a North Star, but there was no defined path whatsoever. Yeah, it didn't really exist. And it's funny because like, you know, my dad, when he got out of school, he very much like, you know, he got a degree in computer science, got a job from, you know, working at IBM, and had worked there for forever, right? He had a very well-defined career path. When I told him I was moving out to San Diego, and sort of like, you know, at the time, just explaining like, well, yeah, the best jiu-jitsu in the world's out there. He's like, yeah, but you want to do strength and conditioning, right? I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm going to like, I'm going to train with the guys, and then like, maybe I'll see if any of them want to lift. And he's just like, dude, it wasn't until I finally opened my own location and he came out here, and he was like, this was years after. He was just like, I think I get it now. And like, I'm not going to keep trying to convince you to like get a real job, you know?
Yeah. I relate to that a lot. I mean, my parents were not as, but yeah, I remember the look on their face when I told them I was going to become a personal trainer, and just, you know, that they love you and stuff like that. But then like, yeah, they're just so scared. They're like, my baby is picking the dumbest career path, and there's just so many easier options that they have the talent to pursue here, and sort of relate. And then there's always that moment where you can show them something, whether it's your bank account or an actual brick and mortar facility that you be like, yeah, see, people actually pay me to do this. And then there's almost that, like, you see a little bit of guilt swell up, and they're like, oh, I was just trying to protect you.
Oh yeah. Oh man, for the longest time, it was kind of the typical, anytime I had a hardship or whatever, my dad's like, yeah, so like, when are you gonna like get a real job? You know? Yeah, man, it's I mean, strength and conditioning or personal training can be really like not direct as a career path. And even, dude, like, I never would have guessed that social media would have been such a big part of it as well, you know, especially way back when I started. Yeah, it was yeah.
I mean, this would have been prior to IG Fitness. Totally. Instagram was definitely chronological back then. I think about the damage I could do on a chronological Instagram algorithm. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. Imagine 100% of your followers seeing every post. Like, holy shit.
Or, dude, like, you know, and all the stupid stuff. Like, I remember being on Instagram in college.
There's no links. To be fair, you couldn't link people out. How were you doing it before the swipe up? I guess it was just, you just had to advertise the website, get them to a website.
For sure. Yeah. So there was the swipe up at 10,000 followers, which I remember I was so psyched to finally get. And then everyone had it.
Then like, I gave it to everyone.
Yeah. And I'm like, wait, where's my elitism? Yeah.
Oh, it was such a privilege.
Right. But yeah, man, it's kind of wild how big of a piece it became. And even just like for refining my voice, right? Like, for being able to communicate these things, seeing how it lands on like a larger audience, like it's not all that different from how it's going to land on some rando who comes in for an initial consult, right? Like if you've got something that can resonate with the masses or that can sort of surprise them, and you're like, yeah, I've got an interesting take on this. It's an angle you can usually take in person as well.
Yeah, I wish more people saw it that way. It is just an extension of your communication repertoire. And there's so many people that are shit communicators that just think that they're shit content creators. It's like, no, there's probably people who are just like internally rolling their eyes at everything you say as well. It's like communication is communication at the end of the day. When did you sort of start flirting with, it's so cringe to say it this way, but I'm just going to say it because we're all comfortable as content creators here, building your personal brand?
Okay, so I don't know if you know this part about me, but when Brett Contreras moved to San Diego, I
remember.
Yeah, I operated Glute Lab for him, me and the guy that started Electrum with me. I was running Brett's gym.
The other guy, so both of you were working under Brett.
Bro, it was the craziest thing. So I was actually, so
Basically,
my buddy,
the inventor of the glute muscle.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, dude. So we saw that he was moving to San Diego. We were, we way back in the day, we had read like his T Nation articles and stuff, right? Like, we're like, wait, Brett's moving to San Diego. And I remember him and I were working at UCSD, doing like some training there, and then training the Atos team on the side. And
so already had street cred by this point. Because I was thinking, my timeline of this is so fucked up because I was envisioning the working under Brett version of you as, not training many jiu-jitsu legends and stuff. But you're already doing that.
Dude, I was already doing that, and I was still so like, I was like that classic, you talk about communication skills and stuff and how that can like build resentment for social media. I was like, fuck social media. Yeah. I'm not in it for the vanity, blah, blah, blah. I just train people. Like, and it was stupid because it's funny. If I look back at all the content that I do have from those lifts, one of my roommates who was a full-time competitor, really good, Adam Bradley. He, he trained or he competed at CJI and made it to the semifinals.
Holy shit.
One of my best friends. He had broken his elbow at Pans. And literally he was going to the lifts with us and he was like, you know what? I'm just going to record this shit for you guys. And he took my phone, dude. And like, there's so much footage there and it's shot horribly, whatever, but like it exists. Like there's like this 2-month span where he actually recorded a ton of it. He's got some like impromptu, like we're teaching a floor press to a bunch of jiu-jitsu athletes and he pans through the crowd and you got like Keenan and you've got like Jonatas and Kynan. Like Kynan's got a full head of hair. Like it's crazy, dude. So anyways, all that stuff was happening before we met Brett. Brett moves to San Diego. And dude, I kid you not, one day Bryce and I are there. Bryce is the gentleman that I started Electrum with. We're sitting there and we saw that Brett moved out here. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to just shoot him a DM. I'm like, there's no way he's going to read it. Like he's got, however many at the time, only like 250,000 followers or something. But, inflation. Shot him a DM. He literally answered right after. And I remember I'm in camp for Worlds. So I'm waking up each day. I'm training comp class at Atos. Then I'm dragging my sorry ass to UCSD, ripping shots of espresso to try to like be somewhat conscious and train people, getting through those regular hours and then like training Atos at night after that, rinse and repeat. And I remember this was like towards the end of one of the days where we weren't training the Atos team. So I get to go home and actually like somewhat recover. And I had just done my lift. So that's like my second session for the day. I shoot Brett the DM and he literally responds immediately and goes, he's like, man, I would love to meet you guys. Let's lift and hang out tonight. And I'm like, I can't say no to this. So I'd already lifted. And then I'm not going to go and just like not move around weight, like around Brett. So then, in full, like,
because Brett's a strong guy. He was like a 300 kilo deadlifter back then.
Oh yeah.
Oh shit.
Brett's definitely strong. Yeah. And like, I was not about to like show up and look, like a freaking wuss. So go and lift
what was
again.
Your height and weight at the time? Give us height and weight stats.
So I'm 6'4". At the time I was competing at heavy in jiu-jitsu, which is like 208. I'm like 230 now. So I was a bit leaner.
God, the height just spreads it out. It is crazy. Yeah, because I didn't realize you were 6'4". I knew you were above 6 foot, but that's adding some context now.
Dude, I get this from people all the time. Like I meet them when we
that's a bit to get tangled up with.
Yeah, dude, people all the time are just like, oh man, you're actually kind of big in person. I'm like, fuck you, dude.
No. I get it worse because I just am smaller than you, but I'm not a tiny person. People always send me merch and I'm always mega grateful. They always send me smalls.
Oh man.
Please,
it's brutal.
Please, if anyone's listening, if you're ever going to send me shit, send me something too big and I'll think you're a sick cunt.
That's how you get the brownie points, dude.
Dude, send me a 4XL about this person thinks I'm a legend.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, man. So yeah, at the time I was just over like 200 pounds. Lean is all hell though, but yeah, go lift with Brett. And then honestly, he asked us to come back a few days later. We come back a few days later. One thing leads to another. He's like, yeah, I'm opening up a gym. I want you guys to work for me. So then we quit our jobs at UCSD. We worked for Brett so then my day-to-day became train jiu-jitsu in the morning, work for Brett through like the middle of the day, and then at night train the Atos team. And I won't lie, like super stressful period of my life, but like an insane amount of like training volume. Not in term. I mean, my own training had to take a bit of a back seat, but in terms of training people and like having Brett's presence, like drive like an influx of clients, man, it was wild. So we got our Atos teams at night. We've got like, we're running Glute Lab during the day. It was a pretty wild 2 years.
So did he just have leads flooding through the door and you just train him at a rate?
Dude, okay. I have never in my life we had like a 200 person wait list in a matter of like, I don't know, 2 months, like literally full every hour. And honestly, we sat down with Brett and we came up with the business structure that I still use at my gym, which I actually think is like pretty awesome, but I'll let others decide. Essentially, everybody has like a one-on-one with a coach as their initial session. And then you get brought into like these group training sessions where you have your own program and you have your own coach. So it's like and it exists in a price point between like group fitness and like personal training. So it's more sustainable for people. For the coaches, you're front loading all your work. You're building out your programs for the next, month or even more. And then just because Bryce and I came up through a Division I sports environment, we're just running it like a D1 weight room, right? Except it was Glute Lab, except it was everyone trying to get like huge, factory. Yeah, no, seriously. And dude, there were some freaking outliers there. Like there were some like really strong, and we had a lot of women roll through, but then we started training some additional jiu-jitsu athletes in there as our popularity went up as well. It was a wild time.
So it was like 10 people in the gym. Everyone had their own personalized program. And then you had a couple coaches manning the floor sort of thing, checking up.
Yeah. Usually more than 10. And the first Glute Lab was not that big, dude. It was like 1,800 square feet. It was packed.
Was there ever Atos times Glute Lab a t-shirt or any merch? That would have been insane.
No, there wasn't.
I wish there was some sort of relic that you had, like Alex Sterner, head coach, Glute Lab, and Atos S&C. Like that is two like major fucking tags there.
Dude, crazy, like two sides to a coin. Like, I don't know. I feel like either one could have been easily a very full-time gig. And just like, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do both of these at once.
Yeah.
But yeah, I won't lie. So actually, to circle back to, you mentioned like content creation and like when I got started with that.
Was it Brett that was like, what are you doing?
100% Brett. And he was like, he's like, dude, you guys are brilliant. Like you need to have this stuff online. And
this is the chat. Sorry to cut you off because you're laying down some fire here. I want to make a note to so many other people. You are not going to get this chat. You're not going to get this chat. No legend of the industry is ever going to pull you aside and be like, man, you're awesome. Post content every day. So pretend this chat is happening to you. What Alex is about to say.
For real. No. And honestly, you post this stuff all the time about how like there's so many charlatans that have zero friction for getting their content and their ideas out there. Like if you're somebody who who you have relevant experience, you have like, just start doing it. Start refining that voice.
We absolutely love doing this show. And one of the most exciting things for us is watching it grow because it means we can commit more time to it, as well as have access to better guests to bring you even more quality content. One of the most impactful ways you can help us grow the show is by shouting it out, screenshotting this episode, and sharing it on your stories to let people know that you're listening. Don't underestimate how influential you can be on helping us grow this show, and we appreciate it so much.
Honestly, like so many other things, it takes a while. Like, dude, I'm still like really striving to get better with communication. I actually, I will. I was on Austin's podcast the other day,
Friend of
and
the show.
I credited him. I want to give this to you as well. Something you guys said on a podcast you guys had together that really like resonated with me, mostly because for a long time I think I was really fucking this up. I forget which one of you said what, but you were comparing content creation to like dating and talking about how like trying to pack long form information into short form content is like trauma dumping on the first date. And I'm like, dude, that's
that was Austin.
Yeah, that's such a good way to think about it. Dude.
Isn't it cathartic trauma dumping on the first date? I do enjoy it. Sometimes I look up and I'm like, this is not going anywhere. It's time for you to learn about me. But no, point well taken from the medium is the message perspective.
Yeah, man. And like, dude,
because you're an intelligent person. You're capable of writing a dissertation, and it requires self-control to not do that.
For sure, dude. And honestly, to your credit as well, like I think a lot of like, dude, you do have that short form voice down, where like a lot of times you'll get into the nuance a bit, but like it's really more so when you leave it for the long form, because how in 15-30 seconds are you going to get into the weeds on this? You don't even try. And for me, sometimes I can't even help myself. You get a little caffeine in you and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna teach him today, and it's just like, it's like, bro, that's way too much,
It's like there's got to be someone reading that while they're driving their car. Not that you should be on Instagram while you drive, but like, when you think about like traffic.
Yeah. No, and how we consume content, like it's psychology, right? But not even that. Like I think it applies to how I train clients on my first session. Like, you don't need to like, all right, I'm going to teach you everything I know. Like, chill, dude. Chill. Today, I'm going to have you like sit down and stand up with some weight, right? Like, and that's it. And then we'll talk a little bit about like, oh yeah, you want to learn how to train hard and I got you with that. But you don't have to, okay, so we've got reps in reserve and we have rate of pursuit. Like, bro, chill,
When did you become a confident trainer, or have you always sort of had your shit together in that regard? I was big on, back in the day, I was very insecure and I spent a lot of the session trying to convince the client how smart I was. Did you have to deal with that much, or was that something you figured out early on? Talk me through that.
Man, I think coming out of like a solid kinesiology program, like interning under some really successful strength coaches, and then being thrown into commercial fitness with like, man, some of the meetings we had, like with the trainers, I'm sitting here and I'm just like, I can't be sitting. Like it was tough, man. I think like with my peers, and then obviously like I've got this person who doesn't know their ass from their elbow, and they're 3xing me in their monthly revenue as a trainer. Like it very much drove me to do better. But yeah, man, there was I look back on some of those early, like I have a bunch of those programs are written on like Google Drive and stuff, and it's on an email I don't use anymore. And from time to time I'll go back and be like, okay, we've grown a bit, like, yeah, there was, I was definitely insecure with that for a while. I think once I came out, started really working in settings that I wanted to when I was in San Diego, working with the populations I wanted, working with people in jiu-jitsu. It has its own struggles for sure. I think even the average person in jiu-jitsu kind of shuns strength and conditioning, and that's a struggle in and of itself. But man, I think around that point I started to settle. I think then having Brett, and I honestly, I think before working for Brett, I was starting to like smell my own farts a little too much. And having somebody really like call me out on that, somebody who was very evidence-based, who like sometimes I'd make a claim and he'd be like, why? And I'm like, and I'd be like, oh, well, cause of blah, blah, blah. He's like, you're sure? Like, I won't lie. The way Brett's way of thinking, not just as it relates to social media, but as he's a really interesting mix himself of like reads a shit ton of research. Like that dude reads a shit ton of research. And at the same time, he's a fucking bro. Right. So like it was very much the like,
They're the best.
Yeah. And like some of his stuff, he's, man, there would be times where we'd be having a staff meeting and he's by hand on like some piece of like printer paper. He's like mapping out like passive versus active tension of the glutes at different degrees of like hip abduction and hip flexion. But then at the same time, there'd be other times where we're lifting and he'd be like, bro, I don't know why this feels this way. You just got to fucking try it, And that was like a really useful thing for me to see too, because I think myself, I'm very much like, I do love to, to dive into the research when it makes sense. But at the same time, like, dude, when Kevin and I came out here, we weren't like, oh, dude, check out this study. We're like, yo, check out this awful looking exercise. Let's just
check out this chainmail.
Yeah, dude.
That was awesome. The chainmail was fucking phenomenal. I'm glad you brought that up, that the duality of man, the evidence-based man, or the based man, as we should call it. And I mean, because now they've got a different word for it now. The kids are calling it science-based. I'm like, no, they're fully they're real fucking idiots. But like even with evidence-based practice, which is what science-based lifting is trying to impersonate, I think. What are your thoughts there between trying to strike a balance and not being too finger wavy? Where's your PMID? Or is it something that's in you? Can you not develop the quality? I question whether you can develop it. I wonder.
Develop which part? The vibey or the evidence?
The blend. The blend.
Yeah, I mean, dude. So coming from, I actually, like I said, I took like a pretty big swing, and it's funny. I feel like I've always been like this in my life. Like I go through a period of time where I don't fully like absorb, or I'm not as grateful or present. Like, man, I wish I could go back to those interning hours. I love that I did as much as I did, but I didn't get everything out of it that I wish I could have. And I feel like now after the fact, like after the fact, it makes me dive into it more. Like when I was working for Brett, how much, dude, that dude knew research like insanely well, to the point where like, yes, I would read stuff, and like he would have us do like reading before certain meetings and stuff, which was huge. It was, I loved it, but I sort of like didn't take full advantage of it. And now, dude, I read way more research now than when I worked for Brett. And so I think for me, I've had like that blend has moved around a lot. And I even think immediately after working for Brett, like, I think I was a little too much on like the research side. And now like, I'm very much like diving into the vibes, but under I don't know,
with some more science-based principles to sort of underpin it. I'm glad you brought up this sort of seasonal, I guess, aspect to it, because I think social media and evidence-based or science-based social media is creating an idea in evidence-based coaches' heads that you need to be in this perpetual state of reading research, because like you're gonna miss something. I mean, you can stop reading research for a couple of years and check back in. I promise, not much has moved. Like, if you're on social media, you'll think that there's been change. Like, oh, lengthened partials. Oh, no, now it's shortened for the fucking quads. Whereas if you just come back every 2 years, I reckon, as assuming you had that base of like just being aware of the scientific principles that are generally agreed upon by a lot of sane professionals, I just don't think you notice that much change. I think it's social media evidence-based practice, which makes us feel like it's this thing you need to be perpetually sucking on.
Yeah, man, this is something. So I have coaches at my gym, and we have regular meetings and stuff. I'm trying to get better as a leader in terms of like helping them develop as best I can. And like something that I try to get. What's that?
That's hard. I struggle with that.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, like something I've gotten across to them is like, I could never read another paper ever again. But if I improve my communication skills, I will be a better and better coach definitively in any way that we want to look at it. And like, that's what I am trying to do better at. Like, I think there's power of the spoken word, even in terms of my content creation. Like, I started to force myself to do more talking head stuff, even that like that idiotic March Madness thing that I'm doing right now that I've completely buried myself with. Like, I have to do so many talking heads, but I'm forcing the practice because I really do think there's so much power in the spoken word. And I think not, whether that's content creation, whether that, dude, like the thing that I really start talking to my coaches about is like, okay, two people write an identical program for clients, or even let's say one is objectively a better program, but coach A writes their very basic whatever program, but they get the person bought in. They explain a couple points about like, hey, I heard you with those goals you came in with, and see, this block here is going to do a really good job of getting you towards this goal. This one here, I know you didn't say that you wanted a better number in this lift, but by pushing your numbers in this lift, it's going to allow you to do X, Y, Z. And the amount of buy-in and the way that you can package those ideas and hand them to another person is so potent that like, I don't know if masterful programming without the communication can ever make up for that,
That's very real. I talk about it, the shit trainer getting results paradox. And it's not, it's a mischaracterization of them, because it's exactly what you said. Like, at the end of the day, the good trainers are the ones that get the best results. But I used to be so salty because I was like, man, I know how to write the sickest fucking programs. And then there'd just be a more charismatic, more popular trainer down the street who the athletes liked hanging out with, who they respected. Or maybe it was, again, just like explaining the program, making sure that they were bought into it, not making sure that it lined up more accurately with the scientific principles of strength training.
I think just as well, like developing conviction in your athlete, like they'll train harder, they'll rock up more. Like, it does the work for you. That's what the
gurus actually do well. Like,
dude, I was going to say, I wasn't sure I wanted to like dive into it, but yeah, man.
My God, Nowdy praise, it's coming.
Yeah, there it is, dude. Man, I think that when you can start to like foster that, and I would argue that with his social media, he doesn't do a great job of actually communicating the things. But when he gets someone to his course or whatever he does that then, absorbs them into the cult, and they do get bought in enough to find their way to my page and tag FP evidence 19 times, like that person, I don't deny.
Have you ever had anyone do that? Have you ever had a follower, an Electrum Performance athlete, going to bat for you like that? I haven't had anyone bat for me like that.
No way. Or like, man, yeah. And they really go to bat for him, like hard. And so like, what I will say is like, okay, sure, there's a ton of wacky shit. Can you prove that when he says caffeine intake is going to cause ossifications? Like, no, he's speaking out his ass. However, he's getting people who either, had shitload management in the past and got hurt with a barbell, or have never really taken anything, any sort of fitness or strength and conditioning seriously. And they start to religiously do some functional patterns that involves some sprinting, some jumping, right? Like sure, we could argue that we could do things better, but those people are bought in, and they're at least like training with intent. Maybe they're chasing their own tail sometimes. Maybe the explanations aren't right, but like some of those individuals are seeing results because like they're going in a specific direction, and they're chasing that with intent. And that's at least in part due to his ability to communicate his vision.
That's some real shit. With the right intensity, that functional patterns can produce results. And I think we need to acknowledge that, as much as it's laced with a bunch of bullshit. Yeah.
Oh, dude. I mean, look, okay. This is recently I had a really deep dive into FP because Nowdy blessed me. And sorry. Nowdy blessed me and remixed one of my reels, and so of course, like his followers came in, talk about coming to bat for them, but like in general, like they're like, oh, but we get results. Like, dude, honestly, like anybody, dude, you get someone bought in. Like, let's be real. I don't I don't like to profit off of like appearance, whether it's mine or my clients. I don't do progress photos and stuff. I do have clients send them to me. I feel weird, honestly, sharing them.
No, we have to. We have to. I think this is a big mistake. Yeah. I think this is where they get their edge, because we know how you can fake that social proof. But I think the greater public sucks it down so hard. We need to start playing that game. Yeah,
they do. But I also like, dude, I won't lie. Like, and again, maybe I'm not your target demographic, Angus, but like, I don't know, if you started sprinkling in a couple progress photos with your content, there's just going to be more things that I personally just fucking swipe past. Like, sick, dude. I believe you. Right, like, if you told me that you got, 8 clients to drop body fat, like, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if you didn't. And granted, I'm not your target demographic, right? And that doesn't land with me. But quite frankly, me seeing that stuff, I'm just like, all right, cool, another one of these. You get someone to follow macros, or shit, dude. Like, you got the same wackos in diet, right? Like someone who does carnivore and sees crazy results. I don't doubt that, dude. You're paying attention to what you're putting in your mouth for the first time in your life. Yes, you're seeing progress. That doesn't mean that what you're doing is the best thing in the world. And that's true for strength and conditioning. It's true for diet, right? Like, if you start to be mindful and try to just move yourself in a direction and you're consistent, like, you will move that way, right? Does that mean it's the best? Like, no, absolutely not. Anyways, that's my FP rant.
Yeah. I had a question. I know you mentioned before that you sort of struggled to get jiu-jitsu people on board with strength and conditioning and stuff like that. And I feel like there's a problem with both sides of the coin where you realize that everything is, stress, load management, and it all is in pretty much general and there's nothing really specific, which kind of kills, I think, in my opinion, your marketing and your messaging and being able to buy in clients. How do you sort of combine and be still true to yourself, knowing there's not one method, but still getting that message across to, let's use jiu-jitsu athletes to do strength and conditioning?
Yeah. So this is an angle I'm talking to one of my coaches a lot about lately. And with jiu-jitsu athletes, they have a different value system than someone like me or you guys, right? Where, like, I don't know, Angus, I saw you share recently that like you were dealing with like that shoulder injury. Your confidence in your ability to deal with that is probably pretty high. Obviously, it comes with its own frustrations. Sometimes you have to like reach out to a professional. The angle that I take with a lot of these jiu-jitsu athletes, like, you take something like a combat sport, I mean, really any sport, but in particular a combat sport where they're not well versed in strength and conditioning. Load management is like, not only is it non-existent, the absence of it could not be more apparent if I speak that person's language. So again, this is where it comes down to communication. So this person don't have a setting like the weight room where you have a ton of control over every stressor that you place on yourself, right? Where, like, I don't know, if the 45-pound dumbbell hurts you to pick up, guess what we're not going to do that day? We're not going to pick up the 45-pound dumbbell. But like, these individuals are dealing with some of these injuries and they rest. They have like the completely stop element of load management, but then like they just get right back into jiu-jitsu and like everyone has like this old wives' tale of like some crazy black belt who like broke his arm and then just trained jiu-jitsu with his arm tucked in his belt for a while. Like, there's like these like tales of that, but that very obviously like doesn't pan out. And people know that, right? Like, they have this injury that has like progressed into some monstrosity that it never had to be. And it's very easy to use that to sort of explain like, hey, we're going to be the exact opposite of that for you. Like, instead of like not having anything between like rest and fighting another human being, we're going to have lots of ways that we can sort of adjust the difficulty or, the stress or however you want to communicate it to that person, where I'm giving them an invaluable tool to work around and through their injuries. And really, that's the angle that I take the most.
Wow.
And I was talking to him today about how I want to create more content like that. Like, I don't view it as, I could see how some people, you talk about injury prevention or like a pain-free life and it's kind of deceitful, but like, what about a tool that like you can't get elsewhere that allows you to work with these injuries and still move in a positive direction without just throwing yourself into sparring and then it getting slightly worse. And then you take 6 days off and then you throw yourself into sparring and then it's slightly worse, right? Like you can break that cycle. And in person, that works really well. I'm trying to now communicate that better in a content setting because I think that's the biggest, most valuable piece. To just cap it off, I think most people quit jujitsu at some point. You look at the majority of jujitsu careers that end at some point, it's due to injury. If we had more tools to deal with those injuries, less of you would cut your career at that point. Maybe you could buy yourself another 5 years, 10 years. What would you pay for another 10 years of jiu-jitsu? And for these mat obsessed individuals, like they'd pay anything, right? So, and I really do think strength and conditioning does that. The more tools that you have in strength and conditioning, the better you can utilize load management. So that's really the angle that we try to communicate it.
Nice. And do you ever go around the route of, I know it's very pretentious and cocky to say it as a strength and conditioning coach, but that you will enhance their performance anyway? Or do you use the load management and injury sort of angle to take that sports performance improvement message that way? If that makes sense.
So you don't have to prove that. Everybody, as much as they shun it and they say, oh, don't use strength, whatever, it's literally been beaten into them. The person that they know that they're better than, that has them beat in every physical quality. And even though their technique is better and they should stand on higher ground, sometimes they have a higher belt. And it's just that more athletic blue belt that maybe like wrestled in high school, is better conditioned, has great hand control and just good instincts. And this brown belt who has been like studying instructionals, he pays $400 for a Gordon instructional, can't do the things that he knows he should. Like that's not even a sell, like, hey, and something that I tell them is like, I'm not going to tell you that I could turn you into like an NFL player type of like athleticism. But what if that athletic blue belt, those edges he had on you, what if we mitigated that slightly? What if he was a little less stronger? What if he was a little less faster? What if he was a little less of a conditioning gap? And oftentimes, and then I'm like, yeah, then you let your technique speak for itself. And they're like, hell yeah, because my technique is
like that. Back to the purity. It allows you to get back to the purity of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, exactly.
You need the physical qualities
back. Yeah. Because then it takes the ownership into them, right? They take ownership over.
And then you get to fluff them up. You're like, because I know you're a technician. You're so
That's gold. Oh, that's so good.
Talk to me about, so what's your current training setup? Because then my next question is for someone who may be grappling a bit more full-time than you. If you're not grappling with a full-time schedule right now, then what does that look like? So talk to me about your weekly setup, and then talk to me about just like someone who's just grappling mad, that's their whole life, then what a good gym routine looks like for that person in a perfect world. But yeah, what are you getting up to throughout the week?
Cool. Currently I'm training jiu-jitsu 2 days a week. I get 1 day in at my gym. I got mats here, and I've got 1 day in at Atos. And honestly, Atos is where I'm getting those like tough rounds. I've got, ample space for it to be, a bit more intense and everything. And then here, generally I'll pick, lucky me, I have really good athletes here throughout the week. So there's generally an abundance where I'm like, hey, Wednesday, I'm done with work around 5. What do you got going on? And they're like, oh, not much. I'm like, sick. You want to do some situations? And we really focus on more so on the skill acquisition side. Generally, the way we break that down is we'll do like short duration situational training where it's like, hey, we'll go back and forth. I'll do whatever you need me to do for your situational training as long as you do the same for me. With just one partner, in 45 minutes to an hour, your amount of training density in the area where you feel you need it is like very, very high, not super tough on your body relative to that. So honestly, I'm getting a ton right now out of just those 2 days a week. Atos is exposing me, whatever they're teaching in class. So sometimes it's stuff totally new to me. Other times it's more in my wheelhouse. And then here it's very much like I'm in charge of my own skill acquisition and trying to sharpen specific things. So for me, it's just those 2 days a week. It's not a ton, but it's enough for me to noticeably see improvement in my game. And most importantly,
I like that though. I would feel like that. I'm guessing there's a decent amount of conversation that for high level grapplers, there's an attitude that you need to be in there like 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. So 2 real intentful sessions per week. That's nice to hear. Like a high level grappler can get the something out of that.
And like most importantly, it doesn't really impact my lifting numbers, which we all know is the most important thing. So
the lifting's been going good, man. I when I saw you hit that 160 front squat, I was like, I want a fucking 160 front squat again. I miss it.
Yeah, man. I've really been buckling down. Front squats I was running for a while after. Yeah, I wanted to find out how deep the water was for Zercher squats, and I did pretty consistently.
What'd you get up to there on Zerchers?
Yeah, so I flew up like literally not even coming close to failing, like well above 200 kilos. I got to 455 like on a whim. I won't lie, that 455 was after like 2 beers, and I was just like one of our clients came in. It was his birthday. We were like, tasting a couple like craft beers, whatever. And I still hadn't done my lift that day, and it was Zerchers. And I'm like, bro, these are flying up. I'm like, it was like a 30-pound PR, and I'm like, yeah, just load it. I'm like, you can't fail a Zercher. You just stick your butt back a little bit more. And so got 455. It gave me a totally diluted sense of like what I was capable of, because lo and behold, that was like pretty much my max. Because many times after that, I even trying to hit 455 again, I failed a couple times. So yeah, that's about where I got to on that. Then I started to focus more on front squats. Let's see, 163? Yeah. Okay, I'm just shy of I hit 345, so that would be
165. No, 180.
352. Yeah, man. Yeah, so I got buried by that a couple times. I got to 345, so just under 160. Don't float up my numbers on a.
Yeah. Oh wait, people come for you. People come for you.
Wait, you hit 160?
I hit one. No, this is way back when I was a weightlifting pig, telling my girlfriend that we couldn't go on a cute walk because it burned too many calories. I hit 160 for a double.
160 for a double.
I mean, it's the only time I've ever gone for a PR and been like, shit, I think I'm going to double that after the first rep. It was like one of the greatest days of my life.
God,
truly.
You're still in your IG highlights?
Yeah, it's silly. I'm bringing that back. I'll put 160 across my collarbones before the peak of winter down here. You just jogged my memory when you were talking about situational sparring.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel about Greg Souders? Sorry, no, let's not make it personal. Sorry, forget I said that. No, whatever. He's so tied to it. Because I'm big on the ecological approach. But I'm into it too. When I hear Greg Souders talk to people about it, I want to blow my fucking brains out.
Okay. So I'm actually going to say, I would gladly say this to him in a heartbeat. First off, I will give credit where credit's due. I think bringing this perspective to this like knuckle dragging sport of jiu-jitsu is important. Okay, so first off, I'm going to give him credit there. But, and this is what I find ironic. Actually, I commented this on that YouTube video where he had that conversation with Israel.
Yes, that was wild. That was cinema.
Yeah, it was actually great. And, Israel catches a lot of flack nowadays, but that was very, very well done in my opinion. Okay. This is what I find so funny. I wish I could recall exactly the way someone said it, because it was one of those things that I left where I was like, this is so tight. And then of course no one saw it, but someone was like, what's the ecological dynamic approach or no, what's the CLA approach for verbally getting somebody to understand ecological dynamics? But my answer, I go, it's called motivational interviewing. And I find it so ironic that he can't talk to people like this. Like, okay. One of his whole central arguments is the fact that you can't give someone an answer, right? If you want it to be a robust pattern. So his whole thing is you create these games, you manipulate constraints to guide them to that answer themselves. Bro, that is motivational interviewing. Stop telling people that they don't know. Stop telling people, oh, this is the way.
Everyone innately understands it. Everyone innately understands it. Yeah.
Just ask the right questions. Just do what you do to people on the mats with your students, and just ask them the right questions until they start to get there. Like, the fact that he can't do that is mind blowing to me. Honestly,
yeah.
It sounded like me when I was back at that like commercial fitness facility, and I just had to tell everybody the studies I've read. I've got to bring up the fucking size principle or whatever it is, right? Like I just had to. I had to tell them, like, no, oh, you're going to give somebody this and you don't know what the size principle is? Like, what are you doing? Like, bro, they're getting people to train hard. They're doing fine. Like, okay, you believe in ecological dynamics and that model of learning. That's cool. Like, dude, I watched, okay, this is a confession. Sometimes I go a little too far with things online. Like, so especially when there's like drama involved, like I love that shit, right? So I watched, dude. I had a check-in with a custom programming client, and I have the Big Dan and Greg like Souter's art.
That was even worse,
bro. Oh, it was terrible. It was so bad. Yeah. And I had it on my phone here with the volume just inaudible, and they're giving me the. Dude, we're going through the stuff, and it's funny because he actually is big into ecological dynamics. So he's like talking about it a little. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's still going on, you know. And like, and I watched it all the way through, and I'm like, man, this guy actually. It's funny with the Big Dan one, with a few of these other interactions. I was like, okay, he just can't communicate with people who don't have the same like hierarchy of evidence as him. So then when I saw the Israel one, I was like, oh, it's going to be great. He's actually, but he did it to Israel too. And I'm like, bro, you're acting like this guy. And I look, again, people love piling on, Dr. Mike lately. I get it. But like,
shout out to Blannis for drawing a bit of a line in the sand on that and being more reasonable rather than just jumping in on a piling on contest.
Dude, actually, real quick, just some quick glazing. Dude, Alec tends to have really, really good takes. Like, he just does.
He's the man. I put too much weight on his opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
openly do. I have him at the tip of my spear of reasonable people that I trust. And if he just says something and I can't work out and understand it for myself, I will likely just adopt his opinion and stance.
Seriously, there's lots of like creators I follow where sometimes I'm like, I don't know how much I agree with that. Dude, I've never like read through one of his posts and been like, bro didn't really think about that, you know?
No,
like,
yeah.
But anyways,
he's the best.
Yeah, like, you know, I thought Greg was actually, this guy, ascribes to the same hierarchy of evidence. Like, if you talk about a study, whatever, and like, dude, right out the bat, like, Mike would say something and Greg would be like, I don't even know what you mean when you say that. Like, dude, imagine you or me saying that to a client when they come in and they're like, I don't know, I want a tone or whatever. And I'm like, excuse me, Marcy, I don't even know what you mean when you say that. She'd be like, what?
So aggressive. Yeah.
But dude, it's like, yes, you actually do know. You do know. You know, like, why go about it that way? It's terrible communication. And I think, like, honestly, it's the reason I went to the Rob Gray stuff was because I recognized that there was intelligence there with Greg, but there's just such shit communication skills that I couldn't actually, and he doesn't actually try to explain himself. He just tells you.
This in fitness for a lot longer than it's been a concept in fitness for sure. For longer than it's been a conversation topic in the jiu-jitsu community, like with trainers being like, oh, stop saying it. Just put him in an environment where they're going to be guided to just doing what you want them to do.
Dude, actually, so as a fitness adjacent topic, the reason that I love Zercher squats and deadlifts, honestly, dude, they are you want to watch someone self-organize, put this shit in the crook of your elbows. Like dude, I coach. Sometimes clients are put off by how little I coach those two movements. I love it because you don't need to, dude. Like, think about a front
literally
squat.
Just drop down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude. Like, okay, a front squat is like the antithesis of it. That's why I call them like gentleman squats, because honestly, dude, your form breaks down to any noticeable
it's a bit
degree
more
in a front squat.
sophisticated. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to have it on point. Bro, you do not have to have your technique on point. Like, you'll fix it.
Yeah.
If you want to fix it halfway through that rep with your ass back and your back rounded,
Shin angle change, yeah.
stand up, dude. You will. You know, if me after 2 beers with 455 on the bar is any proof, you know, I just wanted to stand that thing up. But yeah, you know, I love taking lifts like that are beautifully like not technical, or there isn't like one way you have to do it. The bar is nice and close to your center of mass. So like if you do deviate slightly, you can just correct. You can just be like, oh no, I'm going to try to go more up right now, you know? And I think that's cool. I think times where you can watch someone sort of work it out in their mind is like a really cool learning opportunity. Not just for them, but even for me as a coach, like watching them figure it out, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful moment. Yeah, I knew you'd have a good take on that. I was thoroughly impressed at how you had the Rob Gray book on hand. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. You do keep that thing on you.
I keep that thing on me.
God, we're probably going to wrap this up, mainly just because our podcast producer will get filthy. He tends to freak out when I hand him episodes over 90 minutes. And to be fair, we're already pushing people's attention spans going over the hour. This is fucking phenomenal. I'm definitely keen to do this again, but fuck, fuck the lightning round at the end. Alex, where should people stalk you out on socials? And do you have anything coming up that you'd like to promote? Other than your second appearance in a few months.
Man, I would love to be on again. My Instagram is my name, alex.sterner. And then my YouTube and more like jiu-jitsu specific strength and conditioning on Instagram is at Electrum_performance. It's the name of my gym. And if you're in San Diego, this offer is also open to you two gentlemen. But if anyone's in San Diego, you're visiting, you live out here, like, come by the gym. Training here is great. We'd love to have you. Just like when we had Kevin recently, we'll throw some chainmail on, do some heavy lifts. It's a good time.
Yeah, fuck, that'd be sick. We're gonna get out to the States.